Wilson Fisk, better known as the Kingpin, has returned to New York as the gang war continues. Joining Fisk in his return is his wife, Typhoid Mary, and about a dozen or more Hellfire Club guards. Yes, that's right. The Kingpin is now the White King of the Hellfire Club. How appropriate. Fisk calls for a meeting with Tombstone, who is working with Spider Man and She Hulk, I know, weird, right? To stop the gang war for the sake of his daughter. For Fisk, he has one particular stake in this war, and it's not any territory. It's his legacy, his son, the Rose, who at this time is making an attempt to take Diamondbac's old territory in Harlem. The only problem is Tombstone's daughter, Janice Lincoln, also known as Beetle, has decided to take her own claim to the abandoned Harlem territory. If she is successful, she will have accomplished a feat her father never had, owning Harlem completely. What we have now is a potential deadly altercation between two fathers and their respective children. Why did Kingpin request a meeting with Tombstone, and who will take Harlem in the midst of this explosive gang war? Our story begins with a face-off between Spider-Man, Tombstone, and the She-Hulk on one side, and Kingpin, Typhoid Mary, and about a dozen or more Hellfire guards on the other. The two patriarchs begin to converse, and Fisk reveals that his entire reason for returning and calling for their meeting was because his son had been dragged into what he referred to as Tombstone's war, and the Rose wanted revenge on Tombstone. Tombstone welcomes the potential battle between himself and the Rose, but Kingpin discloses that the Rose is going after Tombstone's family, specifically his daughter, Janice, which is a move that the Kingpin would have done himself. Tombstone is confident in his daughter's abilities, and that is why Fisk has sent a small army of Hellfire troops to ensure things go his way. Now, pay close attention to what Fisk is saying and what he's not. He then follows up by saying that he has invested a lot of time, energy, and money, resources, etc. into the boy, meaning the Rose. Now, meanwhile, on a side note, as Kingpin is speaking, Typhoid Mary is making weird, confusing gestures towards Spider-Man and the She-Hulk. Fisk notices and scolds his wife, telling her to have some respect, and asks her why is she behaving this way. Typhoid Mary basically says that the Kingpin fights much better when he's crazy. So she knows what she's doing. She's trying to ignite the fight, pun intended, because Tombstone demands Fisk call off his men, and the Kingpin invites him to make him ding, ding, ding. Tombstone and the Kingpin collide like two rams competing for status and female sexual access. Their collision also sparks the rest of the attendants to begin brawling as well. She-Hulk and Spider-Man take their share of Hellfire guards, Fisk and Tombstone lock horns, and Typhoid Mary turns her attention to She-Hulk. We then move to Harlem, where we find the Rose, his hitman, Digger, and Beetle, who is joined by her allies, White Rabbit, Scorpiana, Lady Octopus, and Electro, the female version of Electro. Beetle declares that the Rose will have to go through her to take Harlem. He obliges and tells her that that's the whole point. The Rose is attempting to kill two birds with one stone. Get revenge on Tombstone and take Diamondbac's old territory in the process. The Rose wants to be able to tell Tombstone how terrified his daughter was when Digger tore her limb from limb. Beetle replies that she doesn't put on this beetle suit just to get scared, and insults Digger, pointing to the fact that he is outnumbered. This triggers Digger. Say that 5 times fast. And he asks the Rose for permission to engage his adversaries. The Rose obliges, and the battle for Harlem is about to begin. Returning to the first battle, Tombstone and Kingpin are still engaged in a close battle as we see Kingpin drive Tombstone into a wall like an NFL lineman. Spider-Man continues to deal with the Hellfire guards as She-Hulk tries to put out the flames Typhoid Mary set on a group of guards. She really is crazy. Mary uses She-Hulk's divided attention to charge for an attack as she strikes She-Hulk's forearm with one of her blades. Her adamantium dipped edged blades, that is. To She-Hulk's surprise, she feels pain and begins to bleed. Back in Harlem, we see Digger squaring off against a Beetle-led fatal female five. Digger wastes no time as he grabs the appendages of Lady Octopus and Scorpiana. He uses these as leverage to quickly take out the rest of the group. The Rose attempts to capitalize on a downed Beetle and get his revenge via handgun, but to his surprise, the Beetle's suit is bulletproof and she retaliates with a hard, clawing palm strike to the face, crushing the Rose's shades. Meanwhile, Madame Mask is discussing the current status of the gang war with Shotgun while using Silvermane's head as a paperweight. She's aware that the Rose and Beetle are battling for Diamondbac's abandoned territory, and she is certain the Kingpin won't let his son be killed or lose that territory. She is convinced that in the end, for the battle for Harlem, it will be the House of Fisk versus the House of Nefaria. This sparks an idea that will involve her father. Back at the Battle Royal, we see Kingpin and Tombstone still locked up. This time, Tombstone seems to have the upper hand. Tombstone turns up the violence as he takes a bite out of Fisk's flesh. All to the deranged excitement of the Kingpin, of course. Spider-Man comes to the aid of Tombstone, but to no avail, as Kingpin quickly removes him from the adult battle, throwing the wall crawler into a group of Hellfire guards, like a bowling ball through pins. Typhoid Mary, duking it out with She-Hulk, takes a moment to set Spider-Man's arm on fire. She-Hulk quickly runs to his aid, and Typhoid Mary uses this distraction to stab the Jolly Green Attorney through the back. Spider-Man dives into Hellfire guards, She-Hulk handles Mary, and Tombstone and Kingpin trade blows like two punch-drunk boxers. Digger continues to prove no match for Beetle's cohorts, as Beetle pummels the Rose and declares that Harlem belongs to her. Before she can deliver the finishing blow, the group of Hellfire troops the Kingpin mentioned earlier busts through the door and immediately opens fire. Finally, as Kingpin and Tombstone continue their war of attrition, the Kingpin gets a phone call while he's tied up with Tombstone. Bloody and beaten, he collects his composure and answers the call. The Kingpin gets his way as he thanks the caller and declares to the rest of the combatants that it is over. Talk about a cliffhanger. What does that mean? Is the Beetle dead? Did the Fisks get their revenge? An eye for an eye, as they say, right? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe for more Trademark Comics.